today we're having Daniele Zaccaria, that is a Cooperative Extension Specialist on Water Management. Daniele joined the Department of UC Davis in 2013, and he got his Ph.D. in the University of Utah, and he specialized on water management and irrigation. And he did some studies at the International Center for Advanced Mediterranean Agronomic Studies in Italy before joining the university. He and another researcher had extensive experience in all the different areas to manage the water, and today he is going to give us the talk. And is open to questions. This is a relaxed environment, and please feel comfortable. Raise your hand, and it depends if you would like to answer them at the end. We have some devices at the entrance of the room for you to, if you want to learn how that works. That is particularly the pressure pump. That is mostly what we are using to determine the stress of the plant when we determine how much water is using. So you want to kind of have an idea how that works. It's going to be opened at the end of the talk for some demonstrations you would like to. So with no more than this, I would like to welcome Daniele. Please give it an applause.
Well, thank you all for having me here today. It's my third time in Temecula area. Another time as a nice surprise because I come from southern part of Italy, and this area is kind of very similar to where I come from. So every time I have the chance to go around and roam around a little bit, I discover places that really look like very familiar to me. Anyway. So thanks to Vineyard and Conrad and to the Water District for organizing this event. I'll try to keep it as practical as possible. But anyway, stop me anytime if you want to ask questions. Since I joined UC Davis 2013, I've been exposed to a lot of the drought-related aspects of water management because I joined in June 2013, it was the first year of drought. Then 2015 was the second year of drought. 2015, third year of drought. 2016 was so-and-so. But anyway, it was not only a physical drought, it was also a human drought because I was the only irrigation specialist with statewide responsibility because all the other irrigation specialists retired as soon as I arrived. I mean, at least two of them. And so they said, well, here it is, California for you. So it's like a steep curve, a learning experience because California is so diverse. The Sacramento area is different from the Central Valley. The coast is very different. So I'm still amazed by the number of challenges that we're facing as a state. And in the future, it looks like we're going to have a little bit more challenges because of the kind of a big variation from year to year. And so somehow we have to be prepared for the regulations. We have to be prepared for this climate change and variability from year to year. And so all we can do is, provide information for you to do a good job and at the same time maintain yield and quality of the production. So I'll try to keep this, again, as simple as possible. Now, I was asked to provide an overview on resource-efficient design and management of micro-irrigation system with focus on vineyard management. And I've been working in this area for quite a while, although I have to be honest with you, there's a lot of things that we really don't know. And so I can share with you what I know, but that doesn't provide all the answers. There's a lot of things that we really don't know yet, and we're trying to address, but with all this challenges and regulations in California, it's not easy to do a lot of research, but we're trying to do our best. Anyway, let me see how this works. Okay, I think I shut it down. Let's do this way. All right. So I thought about, talking a little bit about the concept of irrigation efficiency. I know it's boring, but it's something that we will be exposed in the near future more and more because of the state regulations. And we'll talk also a little bit about the design consideration for micro-irrigation system and how to estimate vineyards, water, and energy requirements. So when I talk about resource efficiency, I normally make a reference to water, but also everything now is mostly pressurized, and especially in this area. So when we talk about water use, we talk about energy use. And so that is another resource that somehow we have to be concerned about, because not only California is under some kind of a concern about the energy use, but also because energy produces greenhouse gas emissions. And so we have to be somehow, state regulation put some target for the next couple of decades. And so somehow energy produces greenhouse gas emission, but a lot of other sectors produce greenhouse gas emission. Anyway, so the other thing that I would like to cover is method and tools for irrigation scheduling. And the last topic is how to select and implement an irrigation strategy for vineyards. And I'll give some reference to some research results on how to somehow prevent heat damages and how to manage irrigation to somehow make sure we're not exposing our grapes too much to the possibility to the high temperature to damage our production. So just briefly, irrigation efficiency at field scale, it gives you an idea of what fraction of the water that we apply to the field is beneficially used by the crop. And when we talk about beneficial use, we talk about the water that is used by the crop for evapotranspiration, so water demand, and also other uses. And so basically irrigation efficiency is a ratio between the water used by the crop for ET and for other purposes with respect to the total water applied to the field. Now, what that means, the upper part of the ratio includes water that is used for canopy transpiration, so water fluxes that is normally happening in healthy crop, but also the water that we apply to apply chemicals, fertilizer, pest control, and nutrients. But also sometimes we have to apply water for frost protection, and so that's a beneficial use, and so as part of the efficiency. In this area is somehow prone to heat damages, and so sometimes we need to apply water for canopy cooling, so that's for the health of our crop, and so it's also beneficial use. And again, when we use micro-irrigation, sometimes we have a concentration of salts in the root zone, and so that salt has to be somehow washed out from the soil, and in order to keep a sustainable level of salinity in the soil. And so in that upper part is also leaching, so the amount of water that we use for leaching. Okay, the bottom part of the ratio has a lot of stuff that mainly includes a lot of losses. Sometimes, we have irrigator that, forget the valve open, they keep irrigating for days until they figure it out. So that's kind of it's a consumptive use, but it's non-beneficial, and so we have to reduce that part. But also we need to flush the pipes, to clean the system, keep the system clean, and so, what we have to do to keep irrigation efficiency high, we have to maximize transpiration for our yield and quality, and reduce losses. And I'll show you, what the irrigation efficiency is composed of. So there's always a lot of confusion between the irrigation efficiency terms, and so probably this is a good time to clarify. So sometimes we hear about application efficiency, sometimes we hear about irrigation efficiency. So those are similar terms, but one, application efficiency, refers to a single irrigation event, and irrigation efficiency refers to the entire irrigation season. And so, as such, they are defined also by the regulation a little bit differently. So for the single irrigation events, for the application efficiency, we consider the water that gets infiltrated and stored into the soil root zone and is available for transpiration and evaporation with respect to the total water applied into the field. And for the entire irrigation efficiency, in that case, how much water is effectively used over the duration of the crop season with respect to the total amount of water supplied. There's also a little bit of confusion between distribution uniformity and irrigation efficiency, and I'll like to give you an example here. So the distribution uniformity is one of the components of the irrigation efficiency, but it's not exactly the same as irrigation efficiency. So distribution uniformity express how evenly water is distributed across the field. So that means that, our target is that every plant receive a similar amount of water available for the processes, all right? And irrigation efficiency instead is a ratio between what we apply with respect to what gets used. So probably with a practical example, I'll clarify the difference. So let's imagine we're in July, the hottest time of the year, and we very precisely apply to each tree or each vine, like 2 gallons per each vine, okay? So in July, during the hottest period, the vines probably would use all that water for transpiration and evaporation. And so since we were very precise in applying 2 gallons, 2 gallons, 2 gallons. So we were approaching the distribution uniformity of 100% because we were very accurately applying. But at the same time, that amount of water gets all used by the crop transpiration and crop evaporation. And so we are approaching the distribution uniformity of about 100% and the irrigation efficiency of about 100%. It's in the opposite case. We provide 200 gallons per tree, very precisely again, so each tree gets the same amount of water, but only one fraction of that water gets used. The rest stays in the soil, goes gets lost for surface runoff or deep percolation, so it's not available for plant transpiration. In that case, our distribution uniformity is still very good because we apply water very evenly among the plants. But the irrigation efficiency is much lower than 100% because only one part of that water that we apply gets used by the plant. So in this way, we try to clarify the difference. So we have to be adequate in terms of water application, but also uniform. Those are the two main parameters of irrigation efficiency. So in this slide, we'll show the components. So the two main components is irrigation application and irrigation losses. Again, we have to be adequate in the amount of water that we apply to the soil because the soil will retain only one part of it or probably most of it. But we have to be adequate in the water application, and we have to apply water uniformly in order to allow the plant to use the same amount of water. That's the principle. The implementation of the principle might have some difference because we have difference in soils and time in our land, and so being uniform in time is not the right thing to do. Anyway, I'm trying to give you here the principle and the practical implementation. So this is something that like a schematic that what we would like to achieve. The right amount of water for our root zone applied very uniformly across the field or for each plant, okay? And as you can see, the second schematic, this is very uniform, but it's not adequate. It's more than adequate. So whatever exceeds the root zone, for us, is considered kind of a loss. So we can be uniform, but we cannot always be adequate. And the third situation is where we have some area that are adequate and uniform, and some area that is not uniform and adequate. So we got an imbalanced situation. Some plants might receive less water. So what we should do to correct that? We should increase the amount of water to apply. So in that case, we become non-uniform, not adequate. And so that's the things that we should not be doing. And I'll show you what this parameter depends on. So the second component is irrigation losses. We got, sometimes we got soil evaporation because we irrigate during the hottest time of the day, so there's a lot of evaporation from the soil. And that is water that is not beneficially used. So we apply it, and so we use the energy to apply, and so we pay for it. But that water gets lost by soil evaporation. The plant doesn't have the time to get it. Okay, and so sometimes we over apply, so we have deep percolation. So we might be good at recharging the groundwater, but that water, is not used by the crop. Okay. And sometimes we have runoff, especially in sloping area, and because we apply with an application rate more higher than the soil infiltration rate, so that water goes down, and so some plants will have more and some plants will have less, but somehow that water goes for other purposes. And sometimes when we have sprinkler irrigation and we irrigate during the windy time, some of the water goes to the neighbor. And so our crop doesn't benefit from it. So the adequacy of application, it depends on management, our capacity to manage. So when we decide how much to apply, we should look at the soil and say, hey, our soil is still full of water, or has less of water that it can contain, and then we should apply an adequate amount. Okay, so it really depends on our knowledge of the process, on how much water is in the soil. And also it depends on how long we run the irrigation. Given that we know how much our irrigation is applying per hour. Yes?
How do you determine the optimum time for water?
Well, it depends on many factors, but normally I have to know what my system is applying per hour. And based on what my system is applying and the amount of water that I have to apply based on ET or some other parameter, then I can decide the irrigation time. But if I don't know how much my system is applying per hour, that's the key information. I'm telling you, I've run several irrigation system evaluation, and so when people design irrigation, they go with the design application rate, and then the system gets used for 1 or 2, 3 years, and that design application rate of 1 gallon per hour is not there because the pressure fluctuates. So I always have to have a good sense of how much water is my system applying per hour. And so one of the key things is get a system evaluation every 4 or 5 years and maintain the system in good condition, because that's the key information.
Just my question is, are you better off watering mostly during the coolest time of the day, such as at night, as opposed to daylight?
Well, if you want to make your watering effective, I would say, and if you have labor on the farm that allows you to do that, early in the morning and late in the evening are the best effective time for irrigating. And this because you don't have evaporation so much, and then you got, the soil has time to infiltrate water before the ET kicks in during the peak time of the day. Yes, if you have the chance, yes, but there are also some situations where you might want to have labor people on the farm and checking that irrigation is going well. So you're restricted in time. They start at 6 in the morning, they finish at 4, so that's your time when you can irrigate. So in the Central Valley, most of the irrigation systems, for instance, are not automated. And so people, farmers and farm managers, they have their irrigation crew and they work from 5 to 4. And so that's the irrigation time. And that's probably when they start irrigation, they have a lot of evaporation. So yes. But it depends on your farm situation. Yeah.
With a drip system, which is probably what most of us have, how do you measure how much water you're using per hour?
Well, basically, if you do a system evaluation, and the system evaluation is measuring, taking like trellis and put a container under your dripper, and then you know how many dripper per plant and what's the distance between the plant, you can come with a number that gives you the application rate, the average application rate, which is inches per hour. Inches per hour is your key information. And then the other key information is how much water you have to apply to match the crop evapotranspiration. Okay, so you want to balance the two. You want to make sure you're applying what you should apply, and so with the sufficient irrigation set time. So normally, I would say, okay, today I have to apply, let's say, 0.5 inches of water. Okay, and my application rate is 0.05 inches per hour. So I have to run my system for 10 hours in order to apply that amount of water, right? Yeah.
On vines that, like mine, are about 5-6 months old, about how much water should I be using per vine per hour?
Well, that's, the common answer is it depends on the area. It really depends on the canopy. So the amount of radiation is intercepted by the canopy. So if your canopy coverage is about 5% or 10%, then it's one thing. If you're 20% or 30%, it's another thing. And so I'll go through some example. All right. So now when it comes to the distribution uniformity, that distribution uniformity parameter really depends on the design. If the design is done very well, and if the maintenance is done very well, and you're on top of maintenance, then you really are able to apply water uniformly. Every plant, received a similar amount of water. And the distribution uniformity changes over time because you get clogging, you get a lot of material in the water, sediment, and so you have to be on top of your system in order to have a distribution uniformity. So normally we do a system evaluation every 3-4 years because 3-4 years is a good number if people keep a good maintenance. And also you apply fertigation, you apply fertilizer, you apply other product that normally might create some problem to the emitters and clog, and so you don't have a good distribution uniformity. So maintenance and system evaluation is always a key aspect. So when you don't have a good distribution uniformity, some part of the field receive more water than other, and so in order to have plant receiving similar amount of water, you end up to the situation that area receiving less water needs to be more irrigated, but that will reduce your irrigation efficiency. You see, when you move from this situation here in the top to the other situation, you lose a lot of water and you lose a lot of energy because you're pumping. And that's because your system was either not designed well, or because your system is not maintained well, or because you don't really have a clear idea of how much inches per hour is applying and how uniformly is or evenly is applying it. Anyway, so this is an example from a project that I led in Chile. You can see in the upper part there's a new block designed a vineyard. I think it was a Cabernet Sauvignon, 10 years old with a vertical shoot positioning. And the system was designed with with a modern technology. And so you got a reference ET, which is the evapotranspirative demand of the atmosphere. And you have the other curve is the ETA, is the actual water used by the vineyard, okay? And then you can see 3 lines below, those are the water applied in the different areas of the farm, in the different area of the field. And you can see they're pretty close to each other. So in terms of design, there's a good distribution uniformity there. And also, grower has a good sense of how much his system is applying. So it's matching ET pretty well. Look at the old block down on the right-hand side at the bottom of the graph. This is a different area with slope. And so we measure the application rate on top, on the middle, and on the bottom of the slope. And we got three different numbers, totally different. And so you see the highest part is 3.83 millimeter per hour. And the lowest application rate is less than 1/3 of it. So some area receive much less water than other area. So that's basically a system that is not performing well. And so some area irrigate more than ET, and some other area irrigate much less than ET. So in that situation, your yield is expected to be much lower than what you think, and because of water application, and because the distribution uniformity of that system is pretty poor. And it was about 70%. So 70% means that 30% of your area receive more water than is using, and 70% receive more or less. So it's basically a very balanced situation. So, and that was an old block, the maintenance of that system was not good, and people didn't really know. They would say, oh, we were irrigating 6 hours every 3 days. Yeah, but how much corresponds? I said, well, we don't know. And so when we measured, when we took like 5 minutes and we, every dripper, we tested like 20 drippers in the upper part, 20 drippers in the mid part, and 20 drippers in the bottom part, we saw that, in 5 minutes they were delivering very different amount of water. So the application rate was up and down. And so that's not a good situation. So, and how can we correct that? It's basically a matter of pressure. Since the upper part gets less pressure than the lower part, then the emitter provides more water because they have more pressure. Okay, so when you balance the pressure, there's a way to balance the pressure. So that situation is well corrected. So that system was producing probably 40% less than a normal vineyard. Yeah.
In this example, do you have pressure compensating emitters in the new one and not the old one?
Well, no, both of them had pressure compensating emitter, but the new block was designed with the updated technology, Netafim, pressure compensating on the membrane now are much better than they were before because of material and technological advancement. The previous block was designed 25 years ago with the technology, and then, so even if you have pressure compensating, the old technology lose the elasticity, and so they're not pressure compensating anymore after 5-6 years. Now the technology gives you a lot more better material, and so that, the new block was designed also with pressure regulator on top. In the old block, you didn't have any pressure regulator on top. So the range of variation in pressure in the system was much higher in the old block.
So when you say on top, the uphill?
Well, basically the manifold and the the riser pressure regulator basically. And the new block had bread. So there's a way of reducing that range, and that was done. And but you lose, that low performance. Either that lower performance, gives you back. So if you improve the performance of your irrigation system, especially in grades, that's rewarding in terms of yield and quality. If you don't care, you lose a lot of yield, or you lose quality because some of the area were logging. The water was logging, so it was soil that had not enough infiltration rate, and there was hypoxia, asphyxia. Grades was terrible. Yeah. So this is just an example. Now, why should we care about being efficient irrigator? It's always a question. So why is this guy telling us all this aspects of it? But first of all, if we are efficient, we use water and energy bills for producing our crops, or we can produce more yield of better quality with the same water and energy costs. And at the same time, we can have an LP crop, so less water-related problems, so less water stress, or less situation where we have lack of oxygen in the root system, like hypoxia or asphyxia, or sometimes in some of the crop we have phytophthora because we're not efficient, or we have excessive weed growth. But at the same time, we might have better control of water and nutrients. So now water is expensive. In this area, I heard that it's about $700 per acre. So it's a lot of money. And so reducing the excess water application, that will save you a lot of money, right? And in some area of California where I work, water is $3 an acre foot. Why should they care about saving water? You know, it's $3 an acre foot. Here it's $700. Some other area in California, $1,400 an acre foot. So it's very important to be on top of your system. And it's also a regulatory point of view. Everybody now has to be compliant with the environmental regulations. So the Irrigated Land Regulatory Program, the SIGMA for groundwater, AB 589, Bill 32 for greenhouse gas emission, and the new regulation is the Water Efficiency Standard, AB, it's called AB 1886, and it's going to be implemented in the years to come. So at some point, every single individual farmer will be asked to be water efficient. So it's better to be prepared and to come to that point with the right tools and with the right knowledge to do so. I think I lost my, oh, there we go. All right. So at the same time, inefficient irrigation bring higher costs in terms of labor because you have people on your farm working more hours, and water is a cost, nutrients are very expensive, pumping costs. If you have an individual who farm well, you know, you run your well longer, that's an energy cost, and sometimes you have crop yield lower than maximum potential. Look at the picture on the left-hand corner. You can see because of the the rise of the drip tape, you know, those plants receive less water. And so imagine in a normal field, what would it be if we don't have a better idea how to apply water. It's also, there's a lot of situations when you have leaching of nutrients, fertilizer, and pesticide. The other picture on the right-hand corner is a field, an olive, subsurface drip irrigated olive, orchard Imperial Valley, and you see the drainage ditch is full of water. So it's over irrigated for many hours. Water is cheap there, but at the same time, together with water, you apply fertilizer, chemical. So there's also an environmental aspects of that wrong irrigation practices. So it's crazy to me when I was saying, oh, what is this water? So that's drainage water. So because of saturation, they were running for days and days and days. All right. So what it takes to be efficient. This is pretty general, but it gives you an idea. So we all start being efficient with good system design. Has to be done in an accurate way by skilled and experienced people. It has to be flexible in operation, and I'll show you why. The flexibility in operation is important in an area like this, when you have slope, where you have blocks at the different location, different elevation with respect to the water supply. So it has to be flexible in operation. Then you have to have, you know, a good installation and a regular maintenance and the system evaluation, because those are important aspects to keep yourself on top of everything. And when it comes to management, everything is somehow, the principles are kind of straightforward. The implementation of the principle have a certain complexity. And grapes, wine grapes, is one of the most complex crops to manage in terms of water. Because you really don't know where the root system goes. You really don't know where the canopy, how the canopy develops. And so we tend to apply our crop coefficient or ET, but, you know, and the slope, you know, and the aspect. So whether it's a south aspect or north aspect, everything changes. And so grape is really a difficult animal to deal with. Anyway, in order to do a good job, somehow you have to have your own irrigation strategy. So you're going to be irrigating full, or you're going to be applying some deficit irrigation. So So that's, you know, a main situation. So I want to target, for instance, yield. I want to produce more yield. The Central Valley of California, they don't care about the quality. They don't care about, you know, premium wines. They get paid based on the tonnage. And so they normally fully irrigate the grapes. In some other area like Paso Robles, they get rewarded for, in terms of price, for the premium wines. And so they apply either sustainable depth irrigation, sustained depth irrigation, or regulated depth irrigation in different stages of the crops. So now, when you define your irrigation strategy, then you have to implement it. And that's not straightforward. So once you define whether you're going to apply full or deficit, then you have to have the right knowledge and skills to implement that strategy and schedule irrigation. So there's a level of complexity also there. And if I was a farmer or a farm manager or wine grape growers, I'm pretty sure I would get crazy following all of this. And so, because there's so many details that we have to know in terms of what soil are we dealing with, what rootstock are we dealing with, what variety are we dealing with, what is the wind today, what is the temperature, are we expecting a heat spell? You know, there's so many things you have to put together. And then, you know, once you implement that strategy, you want to have a feedback. So, am I doing right? Am I somehow on the right track? And it takes years to learn how to deal with your, let's say, animal, your grapes, your soil, and your particular slope and situation. So sometimes it takes 2 to 3 seasons to understand whether you are on the right track, whether you're doing a good job or putting together the right information. And I would say, people sometimes tells me, you know, we always go by experience, but sometimes there are things that happens in your vineyard that you're not experienced for, like heat or frost. And so how do you prevent that? How do you prevent the damages of you know, like 5 days temperature of 105? You know, so those things are becoming more and more, let's say, significant in a normal day-to-day operation. And I would say you have to be somehow prepared and managing your stuff and somehow preventing what might happen during the flowering. Yes.
So in the Temecula valleys, we use a number of tools. A lot of us use reference ET as sort of the baseline and as a predictive tool. And then we do pressure bombs, visual inspection, that to kind of adjust and compensate. The challenge with that is the crop coefficient. It changes over the course of the season. It changes by varietal. It changes by trellising system. It changes by the wind and all that's kind of taken into effect with the reference ET. Any thoughts on how to get a more systematized way to approach that?
Yeah. So with micro irrigation, and you guys are mostly on micro irrigation, everything is very site specific.
Right.
So the soil water dynamic and the plant water uptake is very site specific. It depends on the soil, it depends on your management. So everything you do has an impact on, because we spoil the plant. We train the plant to be, you know, always spoon-fed by our system, right? I grew up in a grape area, and grapes has never been irrigated in my area. The weather is like here, and you know, we always had good quality wines. Now everything is micro-irrigated. We just created spoiled plants. And those plants become very sensitive if we don't keep spoiling them. So, to answer your question, the crop coefficient approach is somehow a basic, but it's a complicated concept to apply because of the site-specific aspect of your vineyard and the day-to-day variation. So if I was a grower, I would put the tool there to give me an idea, a straightforward idea, not at the crop coefficient, but on the water use on a day-by-day. So we've been testing device, commercial devices are called Thule. I don't have any interest in promoting, but sometimes they solve the problem, the uncertainty, the problem that's relies on the uncertainties of this information. We don't have crop coefficient for all California. Everything we have was done during the 80s and 90s in the Central Valley, in Lodi area, which is totally different from here because it's a flat, different type of soil, different type of rootstock, varieties that were common for that time. Now everything has changed. So how can we apply crop coefficient from that age and from the Jurassic grapes to the nowadays situations? I would not go with a crop coefficient. I would go with observing what my grapes is doing on a day-to-day and somehow replace what it's been using or replace part of it. And so I've been testing those devices versus a more scientific scale ET type of measurement, and it's pretty reliable. The difference was like 3-5% with respect to our measurement, and 3-5% is basically nothing. If I can reduce the uncertainties of my management, I'll go for that. Because, it gives you how many inches of water your vines have been using on a day-to-day basis. That's all I need, right? And a strategy. Because that information on ET is not. So we tried to develop this crop coefficient thinking that will apply from north to south, Southern California, will apply in Australia, will apply in Spain, and no, that's not. That was the old-fashioned school. That's not the case, because it really depends on, your vigor and the plant, how you manage your canopy. If you lift, I'll show you an example from our research. So as soon as the grower put up the vines, the crop coefficient dropped, on a day-to-day basis. So how can I follow up my
That's part of the reason I was asking is, we've had a lot of plus 110 degree, 150, 170 degree days. We've got fruit damage. Those of us who are not doing the double wire, but doing the single wire and a little more of a ballerina or even a modified California sprawl are getting a lot less damage, but the crop coefficient changes.
Yeah, definitely. And now it's really difficult to identify that sweet spot, because we always heard this idea that we have to reduce the vegetative growth of our vine in order to have more production. So stressing the vines pre-horizon, reducing the shoot growth, but that will expose your grapes to more damages. And so that moderate stress applies to area like this. I would not take the risk. Maybe I will be more conservative. Say, I will apply a mild deficit instead of a moderate deficit, and keep the canopy protecting my grape. And another thing is your floor, the way you manage the floor of your vineyard, it's another aspect, because the heat comes from all the directions, but also comes from the ground. And so if you have some kind of even dead vegetation, you can kill your cover crop at a certain point. That cover crop will reduce the reflection of heat in case of. So there's a lot of things that you can do. But first of all, now heat waves are very easy to somehow anticipate. So the weather forecasters, it's a piece of cake for that. They cannot really forecast the temperature during the heat waves, how hot it's going to be and how long it's going to last. But when it comes, they can do it. And so now you have this type of information. So what do? If you apply some deficit, stop applying that deficit, because you want to keep your soil well wet. And I'll show you. I have a couple of slides on the heat. Okay, so. In terms of design, what we have here, the root system of a grape has a very well-defined wood framework, and with all the roots that function for anchorage, basically, and then multi-branches roots develop in multiple directions. So if the soil allows, that grape will search for his own space and will go in all directions. So it really depends on what type of soil you have. But the root system of a grape normally mine the soil both vertically and horizontally in all directions, so it really depends on how you train it. So during the first couple of years, 2-3 years after the establishment of your vineyard, how do you train it? So that's an important question. So you spoon feed in order to keep your roots very shallow in the first couple of feet, or you irrigate or you alternate, deep irrigation so you can push the root down a little bit and get a little bit more resilient grape. In that, I've seen both. In the Central Valley, I've seen people, spoon feeding, and then all the roots, most of the roots are in the first 2 feet. And in Paso Robles or other areas in the Sierra foothills, I've seen growers irrigating like they had a surface irrigation system. So they irrigate for 48 hours. So they push the water down, knowing what kind of soil they have, in order to train their grape to be resilient. When the drought comes, dry period or hot spell comes, that grape can tap deep water. And so it's a little bit more protective. So there's really 2 different situations. The complexity of this is it's out of some time or out of our control, but this is a hot area and is somehow prone to heat damages. So you might want to consider also training your vines in order to be the old-fashioned, non-irrigated grapes in southern Spain or France or Italy. So just to give you an example, grapes can root up to 20 meters. 20 meters are 60 feet, right? So you can tap deep water. Well, I'll show you a graph in the Sierra foothills where growers thought they were deficit irrigating their grapes, and they were applying 7 or 8 inches. The grapes was transpiring like 20 inches. Where this water comes from? There were deep water that the grapes was tapping, and so it's a tough animal to beat. But you have to train it to be more resistant, more resilient. Yeah.
I have seen some growers, not in this region, other regions, that train the vines, but during the first 3 years after the establishment. Is it possible to train the vine when it's already old? Let's say somebody that has a soil that is appropriate for those roots to grow. Could they decided to, I think what I have seen is that they open a trench and they promote the root growth. But I have seen that at the very beginning. Is it possible?
I think it's possible. You have to somehow be aware that will take a couple of years of transition for the grapes to deepen its root. And in these 2 to 3 years, you might end up compromising a little bit of yield. So you can still train your grapes, but you have to be aware that if you do it the right way when it's transplanted, then it's much faster, and the transition time is shorter if you do it right away. But you can still do it, yeah. Because the roots are very dynamic, and they normally go when they have a good balance between water, air, and soil. So if you tend to create that balance by pushing the water a little bit down, the roots will follow. It'll take time. Sometimes we have compaction layers, and so that but it prevents us to establish our sensor there, but the grapes goes deeper. And another feature of grapes is not only taking water from deep down, but it's also balancing. So what I mean is that kind of idea that the first reflection of that energy back to the grapes. And so, yeah, but to answer your question, it's more efficient, but at the same time, at that point, efficiency is really compromised because the plant is sensitive to heat, and so it closes the stomata. That's the priming of your pump. So if the stomata is closed, if the stomata is open, that's the priming of your pump. The plant can pump more water, right? So some of the crops, like citrus, for instance, they have a very efficient system. And so whenever the temperature goes beyond or above 90 or 95, they close the stomata. They protect themselves. And so even if you apply more water, the plant will start absorbing that water during the night, not during the day, because the heat is what mainly regulates the pores, the stomata. And And so the pores are closed, the plant is not inspired. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you were going to install water sensing sensors in your vineyard, would you need to put those at multiple depths in the ground, or is there an optimal depth? In other words, where should you put those?
It really depends on the type of soil that you have. I heard from Vineyard, and I heard also Carmen has experience with that. In this area, the top, the first foot is really, not the right location for the sensors, because the soils are somehow have a specific characteristics. So probably 2 and 3 feet in this area are probably the best, because the first foot is where you have extreme condition, is it drier or wet, and so if you follow that stuff, it is probably misleading. And the second and third foot is where you have a little bit more consistent water, because water tends to go down. In this type of soil, there might be some preferential flow, so cracks or fractures, and so the water tends to go a little bit down. And then I heard around 3 to 4 feet, you got like a compaction layer in some of the area, and that compaction layer, either if it's really a uniform compaction layer, that water goes there and then it piles up, comes back again. So the 2 to 3 feet is probably the best location for some of the soil that you have here. But that compaction layer might have also fracture. And so water at 3 to 4 feet doesn't pile up, it keeps going down. And that fractures are also the way roots goes deeper. And so, but at the same time, that 4 feet layer is not the right location, because you apply water and water goes deeper, it goes very fastly. So it doesn't give you a good indication. So I would say 2 to 3, but they might have, Vineyard and Carmen might have better experience on this type of soil. I heard that according to your experience, Carmen, the 2 to 3 feet sensor are better correlated with the stem water potential. Is that correct? Okay. So that gives you an idea of where the most of the water uptake probably happens, because the plant responds to the soil moisture where it can uptake water. Yeah. But it really depends on the type of soil. Yeah. For instance, we have been installing watermarks in citrus in San Joaquin Valley, and we installed at 3, 4, and 5. And that's too deep, because most of the water, most of the roots, and so most of the roots stay in the first 2 to 3 feet, and so we had to install an additional shallow sensor. So it really depends on the type of soil. Yeah. All right. So I'll skip this part because it's more on the design. And what I want to point out is that the flexibility of operation. Why you want your system to be flexible? Because during the lifetime of your irrigation system, there's a range of operating conditions that you might face, and the operating conditions are the flow and the pressure. So at the beginning, after the transplant, the irrigation needs of immature vines are small, and then it keeps increasing over time. So that system will apply less water the first 2 to 3 years, and then much more water in the following years. And so if you have an individual well, then it probably is worth considering a variable speed rate or variable frequency drive type of pump. And so you might have also blocks. There are different distance from the pump at different elevation, and so your system should supply with enough pressure the different blocks. Sometimes you have situations where areas you have blocks in areas that are prone to frost or heat damages more than other, and so you might have sprinkler or micro sprinkler or fan jet. Also, you might have dual system, and so that your pump should be fulfilling those needs. And the last point is the groundwater level sometimes decrease over time, over the season. So you start with a certain water level, and over the season, because people pump and pump and pump, and there's no recharge, that groundwater level keep decreasing over the season. and keep decreasing over the years, like it happens in many parts of California. So your system should be flexible enough, so probably should be oversized in terms of capacity. Okay. Now, when it comes to, I'll skip this part of the design because probably is more important that we think about how to manage our system, and we go directly a little bit more on irrigation scheduling aspects. Okay, so in terms of water requirements of vine grapes, most of the area of California, the mature vineyards probably need anywhere from 20 to 28 inches of water. That's the total water requirements. Some of this water requirements might be provided by rain. Some of that water requirement might be provided by fog and dew if you're close to the coast. And some of that might be provided by very deep soil water storage. And so we have to account for all of this, and because wine grape cannot take water from very various sources. And so on the coast, for instance, in the central coast, there's a lot of water that comes from the air in terms of fog and dew. So that water somehow is used by the crop. And so if we don't account for that, we basically, and we measure ET, that water doesn't come from the soil, it comes from the air. And so when we don't account for that, we probably apply that water, but it's not needed. So when we want to calculate irrigation water to apply, we have to somehow have a sense of actual evapotranspiration on the site-specific situation, and what is residual soil moisture after the winter or early spring when we have the green up or bud grade, and what kind of rainfall we have, and also, do we want to have a water deficit? Do we want to manage our grape in order to be within a certain water deficit, or we want to supply full irrigation amount? That really depends on our strategy. And our strategy depends on many things, and I'll give you a slide on that. So this is a result of the seasonal water use in our experiment in the Sierra foothills close to Sacramento. It's a sloping area very similar to this. As you can see, we're measuring evapotranspiration of two blocks. One is facing south, and the other one is facing north. And why are we doing this? Because most of the studies in California and elsewhere on ET, or water used by grapes, are on flat ground. When you start adding slope and aspects, the amount of radiation that you have in the different slopes are different. So the grapes, will take different amounts of water. Now look at this. In the top two lines, there is the cumulative amount of water that we measure in terms of ET that is being used by the blocks. So the two blocks are adjacent, same managers, same farmers, same variety, same soil, same type of trellis, same rootstock, everything is the same age. Okay, so two equal vineyards. And as you can see, at the beginning of the season, the south block takes more water because it gets more energy. And then around the 21st of June, they both come to the same point. And 21st of June is where the sun is at the direct angle. So we understood, that it's really a solar angle type of, because the south slope gets, during the day, more sun radiation than the north, up to the 21st of June. And then they start parting away again. At the end of the story, they take the same amount of water. At the end of the story, you can see about 17 acre inch of water versus 16.6 is really, the difference is not significant. But probably we should manage them in terms of irrigation scheduling a little bit differently, especially that area gets premium price for wine quality. So if we want to manage a certain level of deficit for quality purpose, for the color, the sugar, we have to probably manage those different slopes in a different way. And look at the amount of water that is applied by growers. So the bottom two lines, the red is for the south and the blue is for the north, is the total amount of water that is applied by irrigation and rain. So in that case, growers were thinking about, deficit irrigation to grade, deficit irrigating the grade, and it's not the case. Because even if they apply 7 or 8 inches, the grade stops deep water. It was transpiring like crazy. So when we show this graph, we say, no, it's not possible. We are applying deficit irrigation for quality. And so don't show this graph to our buyer, because, so this is the case when you don't observe the plant. So this is a typical case when you go only by ET. You think you're applying the right amount of water and somehow applying less, but you have to really observe the plant. So if this guy somehow had monitored the stand water potential or leaf water potential, and then you can see that there's no stress there, but at the same time, the following year in 2017, there was not deep water there. And so we got a very different pattern between the south and the north. So this is just to say that every year is different. So you have to have some kind of parameter that you want to monitor during your day-to-day management of your vineyard. It could be the soil, it could be the plant, it could be ET, it could be a combination of the tree, whatever you feel comfortable with. But don't rely on crop coefficient and ET only. This is just an example. They were somehow following ET, reference ET by the Sims station close by and say, we have to apply half of it. And this is the result. The plant was tapping deep water, no problem. So they got good yield that year, but they didn't get good sugar. And
in this case, it's pretty much double.
Yeah.
What the grower applied.
Yeah.
Were you able to see any signs on the grapes, like an excessive amount of foliage, or?
No, the grapes were very happy, and those soils were well draining, and so I think it was an example of very efficient vineyard, but not because of the irrigation management, because of the grapes that can go deep and compensate for lack of water. So you see, they apply water to the first 1.5 to 2 feet, but that grape was taking very deep water. So no, I haven't seen an excessive vigor, and those guys normally edge, like prune, they do a little bit of, because that area is not very sensitive to heat damages, and so somehow they contain the vigor by doing like green foliage reduction. Yeah, they do that. Yeah. Very well draining soil and no problem at all. But if they target a certain quality, that observing ET is not enough. I don't think so. The plant is your really, you have to communicate with the plant, and the plant shows what it feels in the soil and what it feels around itself. So if I had to choose, I will describe this, but if I had to choose what to target, what parameter to target, I would target the plant, some of the parameters of the plant. It could be leaf water potential, stem water potential, canopy temperature, or something that integrates all the information. Otherwise, you get crazy on trying to integrate all the information. The plant feels things and shows, right? And so we can take advantage of that. Yeah. All right. So in terms of irrigation amount to apply, show you here. Okay, so this is pretty easy, slide. But let's say, the first part, the applied water, should account for actual ET minus effective rainfall, and then you divide that amount by a certain efficiency of your irrigation system. And I put a table there with the, field efficiency of the irrigation system. So drip, if it's well maintained, has to be around 85 to 90% efficient. So that means out of 100 gallons that you apply, 95, let's say 85 to 95 is usually used by the plant. Okay, and then you get micro sprinkler and sprinkler. So imagine I have the amount of water that I have to apply is 18 inches to fully irrigate my crop. Then I have to divide by the efficiency of my drip system, and it comes to 21 inches. That's only to fulfill the water requirements. Then if I have water of not very good quality or some salinity in the soil, I have to apply, leaching. And so that leaching, the best time to apply leaching is probably during the dormant period, because that leaching flushes the salt and you don't have soil evaporation. So, normally best time for leaching is during the fall or winter months, because the water district have abundant water, and sometimes they give water away and say, why don't you take it? Well, that's beneficial. So if you don't have enough rainfall, then take that water in order to do leaching. Yeah. So one specific thing here is, I always notice that, there's another calculation there. When you want to do, let's say, irrigate on a day-to-day basis, let's imagine you have to apply 0.2 inches per day, and instead of applying that water every day, you decide to apply every 3 days, right? So you got 0.6 inches every 3 days. And then you divide by 0.85, it comes to 0.7 inches every 3 days. Okay, that's your target. Let's imagine you have decided your irrigation strategy, and it comes to, in a month, it comes that every 3 days you apply 0.7 inches. Okay. Normally, micro irrigation systems are designed for the lowest cost, for convenience. They're not designed for optimal management. So, in several parts of California, now farmers are starting designing their own irrigation system by tripling the capacity of that irrigation system, because they either have tiered energy rates. So if they reduce the irrigation set time, normally the irrigation systems are designed for applying the peak amount of water in 20 to 24 hours. So if I can apply that water in 6 hours, I can stay within a certain low energy rate. I can save a lot of money in terms of energy. A lot of people are starting doing that. And if I had to design a system for a grower that had his own well, I will triple the capacity if my soil allows. So tripling the application rate if the infiltration rate of the soil allows and the storage of my soil allows is very beneficial for 3 reasons. First of all, during the summer your pump might fail, and so you might miss an irrigation. And so with the very limited capacity of your system, you cannot keep up. And so if you get delayed, you get behind, you don't have enough capacity to recover that missed irrigation. Secondly, you can really be on a tier energy pricing. And so, okay, I can apply early in the morning, can automate my system, apply 6 hours early in the morning, where the energy rate is very low, instead of going at 12 hours or 24 hours and go across higher energy rates. And another thing is, in several areas in California now, the utility company like PG&E are offering incentive to growers to shut down irrigation to shut down their pump once every week for 4 hours. Okay, so how can either I lose some yield, or I can compensate for that, get the incentive from the energy company, and at the same time have my system able to, recover that missed irrigation before or after. So there's a different way of having a system that is more flexible, but of course it has to be designed according to your soil infiltration rate and soil water holding capacity. Okay, so have some good designer to do that. Yeah.
Excuse me, Danielle. When I see this slide, and if I am a grower, I get a little bit scared.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where to start. Would it be possible at least to have a reference of if there is some tables?
Sure.
Where do I start to know what is the first number I need to put in?
Yeah.
Because this seems simple, how much water I need to apply, but it's the more complex question.
Yeah, well, the way where to start is your peak demand when in terms of design, the peak demand, and normally the peak demand for your grapes is probably in this area as July. So if you go on a daily ET, you get, that daily ET is your starting point. So you have to apply that, your system has to apply that daily ET within a day. Okay? So now,
And for, as a reference for people, that daily tea, you can get it in the website of CIMIS,
Yeah.
according to your closest
Yeah.
weather station.
so the website of CIMIS provides reference ET, a crop coefficient for grapes could be, the maximum crop coefficient for grapes could be 0.7, 0.75. So the combination of the two will give you the maximum daily ET, the peak ET of your system. Okay, so that is your critical amount of water that you have to apply. That's your daily. And that's where you design your system for. Okay, so that's your starting point for design. The problem is that the system has been designed in that way for ages, and now we got heat spells. So that maximum daily ET never consider the heat spell, right? And so your heat spell, that system designed for the average daily ET will not be able to cope up with the heat spell, period. The second problem is, the system never accounted for drought. So if you start at the green up or the bud break with the soil without water, because you come out of a a very dry winter, that design is not able to provide, to refill your soil profile before the bud break. So we have to, when we design this system, we have to account for unexpected situations. So that's why growers now start thinking and say, I want a system that has 3 times the capacity. It's a little bit more expensive, but they have a more buffer of the unexpected situation. And according to what I see, the information that we put together, the near future is going to be a lot more extreme. So a lot of drought and a lot of heat spell. So we have to be, aware of that when we prepare, when we design the system.
Yeah, and then, the situation here is a little different with grapes. I think it's a little different with avocados because they run 20-something hours. But with grapes, most of our systems are designed to deliver the ET for 3 to 5 days in 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
There's a lot of buffer built in
Okay.
because we have to do several blocks at once. It has to do with management, not so much. And pipe's cheap, labor's expensive.
Yeah.
So that the systems, that's why when we get these heat spells, we'll often go to 2 hours a day every day. We still have plenty of capacity.
Okay. Well, that's probably what people accounted for that kind of type of soil and type of ET. Yeah. But in several areas of California is not accounted for. So when the heat spell comes, even the system, running for 24 hours cannot keep up with the ET.
And also, most of us aren't on pumps. Mostly on
On irrigation district. Yeah. All right. Okay. So what about the energy requirements? Probably it's not a problem here because most of you guys don't have pumps and don't have wells, but this is an important point. It takes 1.37 water horsepower per hour per each acre-feet of water per foot of lift. So imagine you have your own well. This is the power that the pump has to provide in order to lift 1 acre-feet of water by 1 foot. Okay, and then you can see there a table with, you know, how much pump output you have for the different energy sources, like electricity. So we'll provide 0.885 water horsepower per hour per kilowatt hour. Okay, so if you divide that 1.37 by 0.885, it comes, you know, the next table will tell you that electricity can provide 1.55 kilowatt hour per acre feet per foot of lift. So if you use an electrical pump, that's the amount of energy that it is needed for every acre feet of water per each foot of lift. And then you got natural gas, diesel. You see, diesel, it takes 0.10 gallon per each acre feet of water per foot of lift. So if you multiply by the number of foot of lift that you have to fulfill and the number of acre feet of water, you get a sense of the cost. And I put an example here, like a mature vineyard, irrigated with micro sprinkler and drip irrigation, just for you to have an example of how to make the calculation. Because micro sprinkler runs at a higher pressure than drip, you got a difference in terms of energy used there. And also micro sprinkler is a little bit less efficient than drip, then you got a difference in terms of cost that you will have to, in terms of energy. Now, do we want to have a 5 minutes break, or shall we keep going? Because I think I have, in this part, I have most of the method and tool for scheduling irrigation. So you guys prefer 5 minutes break?
5 minutes break, and then we need to close at 3, so we need to include some.
All right. What time is it?
Q&A. 30.
All right. Okay. We'll go fast. Yeah. Thanks.
It's a great point. You need to also know how to use this.
The Paso panel was developed by Mark Battany down in Paso Robles, and it's a solar panel mounted on a frame. And so what we do, we take a measurement outside the vineyard, and so we measure the current that is generated by the incoming radiation, and then we go into the vineyard and we take a certain number of measurements, and so and we measure the current that is generated by the amount of light that gets to the panel. The difference will give you an idea of the canopy cover, basically. So if you measure outside the vineyards and then you measure inside the vineyards, you have an idea of the amount of light that intercepted by the canopy. And so divided the two, you get the canopy cover. And we relate this with ET that we measure above the canopy. And so you can somehow correlate the light interception with ET or crop efficiency. Yes?
So in orchards, where the whole ET thing was originally developed, solar noon makes sense. What time do you do it? Because solar noon does not make sense in a hedged vineyard.
Well, it depends on the row orientation. We have to do it at solar noon because it's where the angle is minimal, right? And so at solar noon, the angle is minimal. We do it it doesn't really make sense in sloping area because there's a correction factor over there. But we do it at solar noon. So now if you have an east to west or north to south, things are different. And so sometimes we also measure with time-lapse camera, pointed on the ground, in order to understand how the shades change over the day, and that will give you an idea of accumulated radiation. So, but anyway, it's a complicated thing. And we also measure the stem water potential at different time over the crop season, and so we measure also the soil moisture. So there are 3 parameters that we keep track of: the soil moisture, the ET, so the environmental aspects around the vines, and also we measure the plant itself, the stem water potential or leaf water potential. Now this is an example. Carmen was asking about this. You know, if you want to get information from about ET, you get information from CIVIS network. CIVIS has 155 automated stations throughout California. So you identify the closest station and you get either daily ET, hourly ET, whatever you need. And here there's in the table there's a crop coefficient that was developed during the 90s for the low-dye area. I don't know whether it's applicable here. And that crop coefficient was developed with research done in some vineyard that had 50% canopy cover. So it was like the California straw. And so the California straw has a lot of canopy and it's a lot of light interception. With this new trellis system, I'm sure the crop coefficients are a little bit different. And this is an updated table with the crop coefficient a little bit more recent, the late 90s, again in research in flat area. So you get a sense on how it changes, and this is again for 50% canopy cover. So it doesn't really apply to your system because so going with that criteria might be a little bit misleading, or you might be over-irrigating or under-irrigating if you're not estimating the actual evapotranspiration of your soil. So there was research done in the past by Larry Williams, and he correlated the ET, the actual water used by the canopy, with the percentage of surface of the ground that is shaded by the canopy. Okay, so you see here a linear correlation, and that again was developed in the Central Valley for flat ground. So we have tried to see whether that approach works in slope, and it looks like it's not working. So this was the formula for estimating the crop coefficient. You see the simplified formula. Crop coefficient is equal 1.7 multiplied by a percentage shaded area. And that's in a calculation example, like a 7-foot vine spacing multiplied by 11-foot row spacing, that gives you a 77 square feet. This is the area allocated per each vine. And the shaded area measured, imagine, is at 31 square feet. So the canopy cover is about 40%. So if you estimate your crop coefficient with that equation, is 1.7 multiplied by 40%, it's about 0.68. We tried in our research experiment to see where we end up. You see the first graph, we got light interception by the canopy in the north and south slope, measured with the paso panel, the panel that I showed you before. And you see the north slope, it looks like it has a higher canopy cover than the south slope because of the solar angle. And then in the bottom two graph, you see how it should be coming according to that simplified formula that I showed you. And it doesn't work in slope. So it's a lot of uncertainties when you want to apply a reference ET and a crop coefficient, because everything is very site specific. Every vineyard is different, and again, the slope and aspects are really a source of a lot of uncertainties. Here is a graph of the soil evaporation. So after you apply water by irrigation, so your soil is wet, and that, so we measured the soil evaporation with microlithometer in two different times of the season. The first one was mid-June, and the second one was the end of July. Of course, in mid-June, your canopy is not fully developed, and in mid-July, your canopy is more developed. And you can see the evaporation from the soil is much higher, in June, because your canopy doesn't shade the ground, so the light enters and hit the grounds, and it creates a lot of evaporation from the soil. And you can see there, the north slope takes much more water in terms of soil evaporation. So according to this graph, if you irrigate during the evening or at night or very early in the morning, you should be able to reduce that soil evaporation. But that requires automation. And so, because otherwise you have to be out of the ground. And so, there's plenty of automation possibility now, and that will make it more efficient and also more effective in applying water. So that's something that I wanted to point out. So when we go into irrigation scheduling, the irrigation scheduling provides answer to the following question: when to irrigate our crops? And in that case, the answer is before the plant-based water deficit. That's normally for most of the crops, but for grapes, you might want to apply some deficit level. And so, and the second question is how much water to apply. In that case, the answer is the amount of water used by the crop since the last irrigation and since the last rain. That's normally for any crop, but in case of grapes, you might want to apply a portion of it, or a portion of ET max. Okay. In the third one, how to best apply the necessary amount of water. Once you define that necessary amount of water, do you want to apply it uniformly, or you want to apply it in a different way because your soil is changing? I mean, your soil is different. Okay. I'll skip this. So when we have to choose a method for irrigation scheduling, we got three possibilities here, and I'd like to know which one you guys use, if any of this is implemented in your field. So we got weather-based method, or a soil-based method, or a plant-based method. So those are three different methods of irrigation scheduling. The weather-based is what I showed you before. You know, you've got reference ET from your closest CMS network, and then you have to apply a certain crop coefficient that probably is very somehow uncertain, but although there's some information developed by research. So this method is kind of very common for most of the crops, but it requires you do a lot of calculation, a lot of adjustments, so probably is not the ideal things to do. The soil-based method, you know, you have to have sensor in your soil. So there's a question: where to install it? You know, what depth, and what if your soil is also variable? Where are the right location to install? Okay, and so this is the soil-based is irrigation scheduling is. The center is you want to keep track of your soil moisture and define a certain threshold. So when the soil is that threshold, then you decide to apply water. And what amount of water, it depends on your strategy. You want to apply the full amount of water or part of it. So, this type of irrigation scheduling somehow requires equipment in the field, and the right installation, the proper troubleshooting over the season, and so somehow it's equipment intensive, but it's also good for periodic check. Even if you don't apply it and you have sensor there, every time you irrigate, you see whether your irrigation scheduling is effective. Okay. I have to tell you that this soil-based irrigation scheduling is a little bit old-fashioned because it was developed for crops that were surface irrigated, so flat grounds, and so you start your season with a full profile, and then you because of ET, that soil water gets depleted up to a certain point, and then you do another irrigation, you bring it back to the full profile. So that most of our crops now, especially the drip irrigated, cannot really stand that wetting and drying. So this soil-based irrigation scheduling has quite a bit of limitation with micro-irrigation, because also the water dynamic with micro-irrigation is very different. So we don't let it dry up to that point and then irrigate. So we try to keep a certain level of soil moisture in the soil. The third method is plant-based, and so what we need to do is to monitor the plant water status. And so, to be, in all honesty, is probably the most reliable, because again, the plant integrates what it feels in the root area and what it feels around itself, but it's also labor intensive. because it requires that you go there and you pressure bomb your grapes at a certain time of the day with and then you guys are busy doing a lot of other stuff, and so unless you have students roaming around your vineyards, that's and again is quite developed for some of the crops like almonds and walnuts and wine grape, but not for all the crops. So I would say the limitation is that we know for wine grapes what are some of the thresholds for stress, no stress. But again, the limitation is labor. It's labor intensive. So, but anyway, all irrigation scheduling methods require some skills. So, requires that you know what you're measuring, and somehow you know what to do with that information. Yeah, we need to keep. Okay. So, what I would suggest people do is also a combination of three different approaches. So, decide when to irrigate based on the plant, what you measure on the plant. So that's the right irrigation timing. And then decide how much to apply based on ET. And then get a feedback from the soil moisture. This is a combination of the three. And of course, it requires a lot of skills and it requires a lot of instrumentation. But, for some crops like grapes or pistachio or almonds, that kind of approach pays off because you get, yield and quality, right? So I'll skip this, and those are information that are probably useful for you to know where to get ET and crop efficient, and those are two tables that are giving you the threshold where to recommend the values of soil moisture tension in case you use watermark or similar sensor, at which your irrigation should be occurring and for the different type of soils. And that means that you're not even reaching the water deficit threshold. So it means that 50% of the available water, the tension in sandy soils or loamy sand is about 40 to 50 centibars and so on. And the other table on the left will give you the soil moisture content where you should be irrigating. So you can measure the soil moisture in two ways: soil moisture content and soil moisture tension, and those are two different concepts. There's a lot of methods to monitor the plant water status. The most common is hand water potential, leaf water potential. In the wine grape industry uses leaf water potential because it's also faster. But there's also other parameters like sap flow, canopy temperature. And what we do for leaf water potential, stand water potential, we measure how much pressure it takes to pull out water from the leaf bed. We got dendrometers and other devices that are pretty common. And what I wanted to focus the attention here is, the first step to be water efficient is, again, is to define your irrigation strategy. And irrigation strategy is either full irrigation or partial irrigation based on your target. So yield and quality. In your situation, I don't know whether the quality is rewarded, and so you might want to consider a strategy that probably
the jury's out on this one.
Yeah. And this is how water use happens in wine grapes most of the time. So you can see the graph. There's at the beginning after the bud break, there's a shoot. So the vegetative growth goes fast and then reach a little bit of maximum before the flowering, and then it drops. And the other one, after the flowering, there's a fruit set. And the fruit set, after the fruit set, there's a cell multiplication, and so the fruit increases in size, and then it drops, and then increases in size again in the following stage. And then the third part is the root growth. The root growth becomes faster after the bud break, and then it decreases during the flowering. So the plant somehow partition its energy in three functions. So the vegetative growth, the the flowering, the berry set, and then the roots. Okay, and so you have to account for this in terms of water management. So most of the soils in California, the canopy provides sufficient water for the shoot growth period and the root growth and the initial berry. Okay, and that happens until a month before veraison. And then after veraison, maybe you want to apply mild to moderate water shortage, like a deficit, and so in order to limit the growth. And then that will provide more light to the fruit, increasing pigment and all that. Let me show you this. When we target the plant, those are somehow the level of wine grapes water deficit measured with leaf water potential. So when we measure leaf water potential, less than 10 bars, basically there's no stress, there's no deficit in terms of water. Between 10 to 12, we consider mild stress, and between 12 to 14, there's moderate stress, and then 14 to 16, high stress and severe stress. So those are the value. So research has been done in the past that shows that if you trigger irrigation when you measure about 12 bars in the leaf water potential, that's probably a good point to start irrigation, and then apply a certain amount of water that normally corresponds to 60 to 70% of the full water use. Now, what is that full water use? Yeah, that's a lot of uncertainties there, but at least this gives you a guideline. Now, see here, we got two curves here. One, the yellow is the expansive growth, so it's the vegetative growth, and the other one, the other function, is the net photosynthesis. So, and on the X scale, you got the median leaf water potential. So if you target 10 to 12, minus 10 to 12 in terms of leaf water potential, so you basically reduce the vegetative growth, but you don't affect the photosynthesis. So the photosynthesis is where you produce carbohydrates, sugar and mass, and so that's very important for the yield. If you go a little bit more towards a more negative leaf water potential, there is where you start impacting the photosynthesis, and so you probably don't want to reach there. And also in reducing the vegetative growth, you have to be careful because heat might come during the season. Heat damage. Well, this can happen as a result of heat waves, and heat waves normally are considered 5 consecutive days with maximum temperature of 95, or 3 consecutive days with maximum temperature of more than 105. And the problem is, again, that the irrigation system are designed for normal situation, and the thing that we see happening now are not considered really normal, and so the way irrigation systems are designed sometimes are limited. So the grapes are very sensitive to heat damage during the flowering, and because excessive temperature can create problem to the fruit set, or can reduce the fruit set, and you can have yield loss. And yes,
A question. We get some pretty warm temperatures here. We got temperatures this year up to 117 degrees. So, what, if any, things do you need to do? Obviously, probably increase some of your watering, but is there anything else that we need to be aware of when we know temperatures are going to be extreme like that?
Yeah. What you have to do is somehow make sure you provide enough water, because the transpiration and evaporation are somehow cooling the air around your vineyard. Okay, so first of all, if you're applying some deficit irrigation, stop applying it. And so that's before the, you can see here is a table. So before the heat wave, so first of all, look at the forecast. If the heat wave is coming, then you can benefit for somehow knowing ahead of time and start, applying more water, because the process of evapotranspiration somehow is cooling your vineyard. Okay, so and so don't go too hard on the vegetative growth reduction with the deficit, and then during the heat waves you want to keep irrigating, because you want to keep also the soil temperature low, so you don't have a reflection of that energy. Okay, the Australians are talking about some spray. So doing before the heat waves, they're also spraying the grapes with some material that somehow reflect the energy back. Okay, and so that kind of those measures improved very effective in some of the dark grapes. Okay, that you have to have ahead of time the information on the heat waves.
Yeah, we do that here. It's kaolinite clay.
Yeah, most of these products are kaolinite, and so there's a reflective. But make sure also the winery accept that, because it might be also. So basically, you can manage you can somehow increase the cooling by irrigating a little bit more. And of course, if the plant is already stressed in terms of water, its temperature reflects that stress. Because the plant is not transpiring if you're deficit irrigating, the temperature of the canopy, the temperature of the berries and the bunches are higher than the air temperature. So when the heat waves come, you might create a lot of damages if you're doing that. So there's a possibility here to predict those heat waves, and if you get like 3-4 days notice, then you can start irrigating a little bit more frequently in order to keep the plant transpiring and the soil evaporating. So that's the cooling effect.
So you want to do that both before the heat wave hits?
Yeah, and
during the
and during the heat waves. Well, actually, you should keep doing it after also. Yes.
So people probably need to read.
Yeah. Okay. I'll stop here. I just have a take-home message that I'll just display. But I'm sorry I've run out of time, and this happens most of the time. But if you have a specific question, just let me know. Yeah. Sorry.
Any questions before he leaves?
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming all the way from Davis. And this is the first of a series of workshops that we're putting together. And I'm sure that they can